Welcome back to the channel. Here I have a video titled Why Dating is Hardest for Average Black Men. I have a vested interest in this video, so I am excited to react to these brothers to see their perspective. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I'm actually going to speed this up just a little bit. All right, let's go.
When women, if they do like black guys, they like black guys, they're talking about the Tyrone, the 6'5", super jacked, athletic phenomenon, or the famous rapper, something like this. They're not talking about just a normal average black guy. So that's the first point. A lot of time when people think of this image of a black man, that's the image that they come into their mind. But the reality is, not every black dude is 6'5" with a big willy, super muscles, tattoos, earrings, all this stuff. Like, not every black guy's like that. A lot of black guys are just short. A lot of guys have normal size, and so on.
Yeah, I would say probably most black guys are like this guy right here on the screen. Real talk, and that's not to, discredit or insult this guy at all, but I would say this guy is more on the average looks level, and majority of people are average looking, whether male or female. But in terms of like black men, most black guys walking around are going to be on the same looks level as this guy right here. To maybe to 1 degree higher or 1 degree lower. Like, do you get what I'm saying? And that's just how it is. So I agree with what he's saying. And a lot of times when women say they like black guys, yes, they are talking about Tyrones, but especially when you're talking about interracially, those non-black women, they will want a Tyrone, but many times they're talking about a mixed race guy. This is something I've always noticed, and I've always voiced it on this channel. A lot of times, these non-black women, they will say that they want a black guy, but really they're talking about a mixed race guy. And you see this a lot in popular media. When you see these Beckys or whatever, they'll be with a very light-skinned black guy, or if not a mixed race black guy. But anyway.
And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because it really shows me where we grew up and what we pay attention to and the people that we pay attention to. I know exactly the type of archetype of women that he's talking about, to where they're only looking for the light-skinned brothers. And again, most of the time, if you actually not even dive deep, just have conversations with them, you'll understand that those girls are colorist. Most of the girls that they're talking about who think like that, they're colorist. They think that the white is right type of deal. And again, they may not be like white worshipers in that sense, but they do like a more of a lighter skin. And it's so fascinating to me, because for me growing up, when I would have these interracial conversations with people, they weren't talking about light skins. Now again, they're not going to discredit them, but when they said they liked black men, they really liked black men. And I also want to point out this right here, because I think they missed this point. There is now again, he said that when they're talking about black men, they're talking about the 6'5" Tyrones, or the successful rappers, or the successful whatever. Well, that's true for any race, right? We can all say that the top 10%, 20% of genetic potential or of income are going to be desirable across any race, right? We can all agree with that. But what I think they're missing is they don't only mean that they're looking for that. Of course they're looking for that. Every woman is looking for that. But what they're missing is, and especially when it comes to black men, is they're talking about they like pop culture black. This is so huge. Hear me. When a woman tells me that she likes black guys or she only dates black guys, I know she's not talking about the average black man. She's talking about pop culture black men. And again, so what is pop culture black men? Any type of black stereotype that you're going to see in the media, that's who they're talking about. The rapper, the ball player, the gangster, the thug, the person who's, and you can see this if you, and again, I don't watch this show, but I know of this show, the dudes in things like Love and Hip Hop or those black reality TV shows, they don't show normal black dudes on those. They show the archetype. And again, I really want to put a pin on the average black guy. A pin in that, because I'm going to discuss something that I think a lot of people miss, or at least as a solution for the average black man that was coming from a sort of average black guy. So let's get into it.
That's the first point I would like to mention. So, Tyrone's is a term, the internet term that a lot of people use to describe this type of black guy. And you gotta understand that what percentage of people do you actually think are 6'5" with elite level athletic genetics? Not even 1% of black guys probably fit into that specific category. A lot of guys at this point would sit there and say that, hey, yes, we already understand that, but look, black guys are there in the list as well. You know, some of them kind of put black guys at the same level as white dudes in terms of the, you know, the dating hierarchy, in terms of what's usually desired. And a lot of guys, like, you know, you'll get other minority groups that may say that, yeah, hey, white guys are the group is at the top, but the next on the list should be black. And they, you know, black guys have, like, you know, a huge, a decent amount of dominance in, you know, Western media and so on. So they're like, yeah.
Yeah, because of the music and because of sports, literally because of entertainment and sports. If it wasn't for entertainment and sports, then, you know, the image of black men would not be that great. Let's be honest about it. It just wouldn't be that great. But because there's a lot of athletes that are black men, and you see them on TV, you know, and you see them getting large paychecks from sporting foundations and stuff like that, corporations, and you see a lot of black men singing and rapping and, you know, doing all kinds of like media, you know, people get it twisted and think that, oh yeah, these people, they represent the whole demographic, when they don't. That's a small, tiny, minuscule percentage of black men on this planet. Yeah, and we know that majority of women are going after the top 10% of men anyway. All right, so let's just keep it real.
And again, I want to add to this point. When we're talking about the list, right, where it's like, oh, it's like white dudes, black dudes, and then there's like Hispanic or Asians, and then the East Asians and the Indians. When we're talking about that list, we're I think a lot of people get this confused. We are not talking about average people when it comes to that list. Average people are average people everywhere, right? We're talking about above average people when it comes to that list. You get what I'm saying? Because again, just like he said, he's like, they're talking about the top 10, top 20%, right? And so if you're not at that point, you still have to respect the top 30%. You know what I'm saying? The top 40%. You still have to respect that. That's still a good area, because usually if you're in that area, you have one or a couple of things that are really desirable, but you're just not at that point. It's kind of like a 7 out of 10 or a 7.5 out of 10. They're not at that 8 status or that 9 at 10 status, but a 7.5 is respectable across the board. We're not talking about 6s and 5s. And so I think it's very important to highlight that, because a lot of guys will put themselves in that category and they're not in that category. As far as, well, they're talking about this list. No, we're not talking about average people. We're talking about above average people when it comes to that list. Above average is simply saying like, yeah, I would definitely go outside. I would definitely go outside of my race to date this individual. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about people who are like slightly above average that will make you reconsider dating somebody of that caliber outside of personality versus your own kind.
What about, they're like, oh, we as Indian guys or as East Asian guys, we're at the bottom of the picking because girls just don't find us sexually attractive. They don't desire us. You guys have the BBC and a lot of white girls or whatever into that. And you can say that.
And that's a very Western take, right? When I go to different countries, you wouldn't believe the other race propaganda that exists that some of these girls are ingesting.
That is true to some extent. I would actually argue that, yeah, black guys may have overall higher sex appeal and the ability to get their foot into the door when it comes to getting laid or short-term flings when you're looking at these type of environments. Just due to, again, we have that kind of perception of being very powerful, wild, BBC and so on. Yes, that can benefit you in terms of short-term and getting the hook. But you gotta understand that there's a difference between short-term fun kind of flings, fetishization versus long-term potential.
Exactly. Why would you get happy because someone basically sees you as a toy? Because if you're dealing with somebody who only is with you because of some kind of BBC fetish, they don't view you as a human being. They view you as a toy. And I don't think any black man who is self-respecting is going to be okay with being viewed or perceived as a toy. All right?
And that's facts. No self-respecting black man is going to pride himself on only being short-term material. I think that's a huge problem within our community. And again, it's spreading to a lot of other communities. I know a lot of guys like this as well, where they're prioritizing short-term fun over long-term because they believe that only short-term exists out there. But the thing when it comes to our community, the black community, when it comes to the men, the reason why a lot of men are never, or black men are never seen for long-term potential is simply because they have no idea how to be long-term potential in a way that really matters. I've had plenty of conversations with black men to where I'm asking them, like, what are the long-term goals? What are the long-term visions? And again, 80-90% of these brothers, they're not talking to me about family. They're not talking to me about community. They're not talking to me about culture. They're not talking to me about infrastructure to make sure they have a place in community that assures their power and dominance and just safety and security of their family. They're not talking to me about that. That's long-term talk. That's real life, real man talk. So of course, once a woman understands that you don't have that type of thinking, you're like, okay, well, you're hot enough to where I can sleep with you. That's cool. But again, whenever I adopted that thinking, that is what changed the game once you start looking for long-term. Because you have to remember, especially if you're going to these other countries, these women have to bring you back to their family. And their family, if they're worth their damn, is going to ask you of like, you know, what are your plans with my daughter? Like, what are you trying to do? And if you're coming over here talking to a grown ass man, talking about, yeah, bro, I'm just going with the flow. Oh yeah, bro, I'm just trying to get married, bro. And it's like, okay, then what? What do you do for? It's like, what's the plan? What are you doing? And you have nothing. Most black men are failing in that category and then are wondering why they're not long-term material. It's like, bro, you're not taking this seriously as other people. This is why a lot, especially in Asian cultures, when they go, they're like, okay, what does he do for a living? What's his family like? Because they're trying to figure out, when we merge together, what can we expect to come out of this relationship? And a lot of guys who I'm talking to, and again, I get it, a lot of guys are lost, but again, it's not an excuse where they're sitting here talking about, yeah, we're dating because we're in love, or we're doing this because it's like, bro, that's childish. You know what I'm saying? It has its place, but that can't be the only thing that you're doing. And I don't see that coming from a lot of the minds of black men. I see them talking about pros and mangoes and short-term fun. And again, that has its place. But if you never talk about that long-term, don't be surprised when you're never seen as a person who's long-term. And I've had plenty of conversations with other people, foreigners, that they have that view of black guys, because when you talk to them, they're not thinking about long-term. They're just thinking about the bedroom.
And in general, yeah, that's just going to be the case. And I'm going to get to this later in the video. The next point is this. So, as I said, people prefer their own, and then next down the list will be white men. So, for minorities that don't really fall into one of those categories, if they're trying to play the interracial dating game, which, again, if you're living in a very Western country, that's going to be a huge, you know, it's a very diverse, heterogeneous societies, you may have to sit there and tap into this to some extent. Minorities are going to tend to struggle in this regard a little bit more than, say, the white men. Just due to, because they don't have that same overall reach. USA, you know, Canada, England, Australia, these are all like white majority countries, so white's just going to be the overall preference when it comes to dating attraction, as well as for the other reasons that I've already mentioned. So if you're an Indian guy or an Asian guy, again, doesn't mean you're excluded from the pool, but you do have less options occasionally just due to to that marketplace that we're in.
And again, you have to ask why. Why? It was everything that I've just talked about. Everything that when you talk to people who are like white worshipers, is what I like to call them. When you really talk to them about it and you just have a conversation, you realize it was because of what I just talked about, which is long-term standing. That when you're talking about, especially Asian girls, when they're talking about white skin, they're not dating white skin because they're so attracted to it. They're dating white skin because of the societal, what is it called? The societal standing that they get in their own culture because of what the deception, which it really is, deception and marketing that whiteness has done across the country. It's like, oh, he's white, so he must have a good job. He must have good credit. He must have this. You know what I'm saying? And so again, just by being associated with that, you automatically get that a part of with you and your standing. And so that's what they think that they're getting when they date this. They think, oh, I get to move up on the socioeconomic ladder because my family is because of this. And so again, it just goes back to what I was talking about, long-term benefits. What are the long-term benefits of being with this individual? And I heard an Asian girl talked about like the reason why a lot of Asian girls like white men is because they're easily manipulated. They're easy to manipulate, right? Which again, and I'm not gonna dive too deep into it, but there is some truth to that.
So people say, okay, just focus on dating your own. And yes, I think that Asian guys, East Asian guys, the Indian guys, South Asian guys like Indian, Pakistani, or, you know, all these other minority groups, that is probably their best option when it comes to the West, because they're not going to have the preference over the white guys in a white majority country in terms of the dating options. So for them, that's always something that you're able to default to.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why I get a lot of pushback from like Asian men when I talk about, you know, dating being so difficult for black men, and the dating experience being so unique to only black men, because at the end of the day, like, location is a big part of this as well. But if you're in a country, like he's saying, in a white predominant country like the USA, UK, etc., you know, your best bet is probably to date women within your group, because, you know, again, people usually tend to couple up with their own, right? And from what I've seen, heard throughout my life, or all the way up to now, like, I don't really hear of like many women from those other non-black, non-white groups saying that they don't want to date their own men. Do you get what I'm saying? Or coming out saying all these kind of anti men rhetoric. Do you get what I'm saying? It just doesn't, it's not the same, bro. Like, it's just not the same. But anyway,
I mean, listen, go talk to some Filipinas. They'll change your mind real quick. But again, whenever I talk to a lot of foreign women, they say the same thing. It's the same thing of like, if I asked you, like, do you like where you live? Most people are like, oh, no, my town is super boring, right? People will live in the coolest places and still give that answer, or like they don't like it. And so, you know, I see a lot of women who talk about that, where they're like, oh, yeah, I don't like my own men because, you know, they're men. And I'm like, boy, do you have a rude awakening coming, because it doesn't matter where you go, we're all men.
Well, as a minority in these countries. However, here's the point. Whereas if you're an average East Asian guy, or an average Indian, Pakistani guy, South Asian, or, you know, if you're a Latino, whatever, even if you're average and nothing special, maybe just, again, it's not an insult, maybe you just work a normal job, maybe you have normal friends, normal hobbies, you should be able to date, even if you're not able to date the white chicks so at a high efficacy, or other group races, you're going to be able to do well with your own, typically speaking. Wherever.
Yes, this is the point. This is the point that I'm trying to make with a lot of the Asian guys that they don't agree with black men having it so difficult. If you are like an Asian, South Asian, East Asian guy, and you're an average, you can still do well dating within your community. You don't have the same kind of pressures and obstacles that black men have dating within our own community. I just don't think you need to be making 6 figures and be 6'8" and, you know, all of this stuff. Yeah, I just don't think you have those stereotypes going against you. Whereas I think black men, when we date within our community, we have a lot of we have a lot of levels that we are expected to already pass. You know, you need to be making a lot of money to be dating a decent, a good looking woman. You need to have a certain looks level. Like, you basically need to be a Tyrone with money if you're gonna date within your community and go after, like, you know, the attractive women. It's just as simple as
Now this is something I will highly agree with them on this, bro. And again, this is I gotta say it, bro. American black women are crazy, bro. I don't know what is in their head, bro. What type of media they're just consuming 24/7. Any black dude who dates his own will tell you that these women are expecting supermen, and you're thinking like, how? Bro, I don't even want to get deep into it because it really doesn't make sense. It's very illogical. So I will agree with them on that part. And again, it's like the thing that's the craziest thing to me is you have to be Superman, right, to these women. But then the moment that the women decide that, you know what, I'm going to date outside my race, they date the most average dude in the freaking world. And I'm like, if you would have had these standards in your own community, you would have been just fine, married with children, had a good life. But again, it's like, whenever they think about like a black man, it's like he has to be above average. And I mean, not like slightly, like really one of them ones, top 10% in every category just to get something decent.
that, like, whereas I just don't think it's the same for men in other communities. I just don't think it's the same. I don't think they have
Not at all, especially if you've been to Latin America.
that same level of pressure, or just pressures. Yeah.
There you go. And yes, this is also the case for black men. However, at least in Western Anglo countries, the standards for black women are pretty narrow and tend to take on extreme hypergamous standards. So what exactly do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, let's say you're just a normal East Asian guy. A lot of time you could just work a normal job, maybe go to the gym a few times a week, have your hobbies, hang out with your friends, and yeah, you could get yourself, if you're saying they're focusing on your own, racial group, you get yourself a cute girl. Maybe she's not the model or anything, but you shouldn't have too many difficulties. However, with black women, especially in Western Anglo countries, their standards tend to be higher and very narrow.
That's what I'm saying. As a black man, when you date within your community, you will find that the women have a very, very high standards for the guys that they want to date. Like, and I think those standards are going to be way higher than the women that are like, East Asian and South Asian when they're dating their own men. I don't think it's going to be the same level of pressure. I just don't think it is.
It's facts. That's facts.
From what I've seen out there. And obviously some men are going to come out and say, oh, no, we have it harder. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but I just think that really and truly, as a black guy, if you're not a good-looking, tall guy with money and etc., you're pretty much going to be...
And I think at the exception of Indians, I really, like, in my heart of hearts, I think Indian guys have the worst. In their own country, outside of their country, I think they got it the worst. Maybe East Asians too. I can't even say East Asians. I'm going to go with Indians, bro. Because if you're a chopped Indian, bro, I'm not trying to laugh, bro, but that's really what it, like, I'm giving them the crown, bro, of who got it the hardest. But I will say that, bro, it's like, for black men, if you're trying to date your own, it is an uphill battle because there's so many things that you have to unlearn for her and then teach her. And while she's being combative, and you have to be like this superstar. And it's like, bro, if you go outside of your race or outside of your country even, it's like you'll realize that you were more than enough when it came to dating and trying to secure what you want, unless you're like a 5 out of 10 who's trying to get a 9 out of 10, right? Without money, you know what I mean? So I think that's the end of his video here. The other dude has a longer video. Maybe I'll react to that and just skip to the 10:21 mark. But yeah, man, I was super happy to do this video because there's a lot of black conversations that I think needs to be had more, and I'm willing to have them. So if you like the video, like the video. If you want me to do more videos around this type of topic, let me know in the comments, and then I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace out.